Hey nerds, what's up? Today I am bringing you an author interview with author Michael R. Miller, and I am super excited because it's been a little time since I've done an author interview, and I always think they are so fun. If you haven't heard of Michael, he is the author of a couple of series. The one that I have started reading is the Songs of Chaos series, which is a Dragon Rider series, which is super fun and very nostalgic, especially if you grew up liking things like How to Train Your Dragon or obviously the Inheritance series. He also has another popular series called The Dragon's Blade, which is about dragons, but not quite as much. You'll get to hear him talk about that in the interview. Either way, I hope you enjoy our interview where we get to talk about a lot of fun, nerdy things. Tell me down below if you end up reading or have already read any of Michael's books and which one was your favorite, and I hope you enjoy. Hi, Michael. Thank you for joining us and being willing to come talk to me about fantasy and books and dragons. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
I've already introduced you and your series. But I did want to talk, you're a fantasy writer, and I feel like I don't know, us fantasy nerds, it always starts somewhere. Like there's always something in the past, like a video game, a movie, a TV show. Like what started that for you, and when was it? Like, was it young? Was it later in life?
I think I was always into. I always, from a very young age, I always liked, video games and stuff. That's probably where a lot of it started. So, like, the very earliest thing I can think of would probably be like, playing Pokemon, like red version, and like when I was 6 or something, like that, or like Zelda on the N64 or something like that. But the kind of moment where I was kind of absolutely hooked in for life would have been, Fellowship of the Ring in the cinema. That was 2001, right? So I would have been about 9, 10, depending on when it came out. And that was pretty much after that. I think I was done for. So that was probably the hook point. But yeah, growing up with like those films, and that felt like the early 2000s. In hindsight, seems like a golden age of stuff. Like especially if you're growing up, like you had Lord of the Rings, you had the prequels from Star Wars, which have their faults, but there was a lot of good content around that time, a lot of great games and things like that. We had Harry Potter coming out. Eragon also kind of came out early 2000s and kind of went through. Like there was just a lot of great stuff. So if you were inclined to be into this, I think that we were all probably captured by a lot of that. And yeah, games, the films. I also probably the love of stories in general meant I quite liked history, so I was always into history and things like that, and getting inspiration from there as well. So yeah, probably seeing Fellowship of the Ring in the cinema, because I do remember being kind of like mind melted. I have very vivid memories of like a car ride home after that, just kind of like vibrating and like begging to go back. So I think that is definitely where it all began.
Yeah, so it seems like we're very similar in age then. I think I was just like a year or two older than you. And like I also have specific memories about seeing Lord of the Rings in the theater.
Yeah.
I think that changed a whole generation of people.
Everything. Yeah, changed everything, right? It just you can't believe it. And then to this day nothing has surpassed and perhaps never will, given how those were made. But yeah.
Had you read Fellowship of the Ring before seeing it?
Definitely not, though, because like I was 9 or 10. I don't know if anyone. I mean, my mum is the big reader of the family. She's really into fantasy books and sci-fi and things like that. So she had given me some other things. Like she obviously started me on Harry Potter and a few bits and bobs, but no, I don't think she had. Maybe I'd done The Hobbit. I'm not 100% sure, but I went and read them after seeing the film. And I will admit, I think my first read through of Lord of the Rings, I didn't really know what was going on. I definitely knew enough that when Return of the King came around, I knew what was kind of coming and I knew what to expect. And because I saw it quite first, some of my friends came up the next day to ask me like, did they do Skirring of the Shire? And I was like, no. And they were like, oh my god, so there was a few of us that knew, but I didn't really have a great grasp of it. But I obviously got enough of it. But no, I read the books after the film. I think the same thing happened for the Eragon as well. I read the books after that film, which is even more impressive considering how bad that film was. Yeah. A lot of it. I read a lot, but then I also listened. I'm an audio person, I think, and so like if the books were on cassette, I was more likely to devour them. So like the big series were obviously on like cassette tapes and stuff like that, and not everything was so accessible in audio early on. So I definitely wore a lot of tapes out, the ones that I had.
What do you remember listening to on tape? I don't think I ever listened to a full book on tape, but I had so much stuff on tape growing up, like storybooks and stuff.
Okay. The main ones were obviously Harry Potter rinsed through. I think an early Hobbit, but not Lord of the Rings. There's like a spy book, like a teenager spy book called Alex Rider. I don't know if that was big in the States or not. I don't know if you guys
I've
had that.
heard of it, but it wasn't really a
Okay.
thing here.
Listen to that one a lot, and it's actually surprising. They did a movie of that too, which was terrible, but there's been an Amazon Prime adaptation recently, which was actually really quite good. So they managed to redeem that one. But yeah, I've listened to those like over and over. That was one of those series that ended up being like, I think there's like 20 books. I think I checked out after book 8, you know, but it started to get.
You got too old.
Maybe, but once they sent him into space, it was like, well, where are we going after here? You know, like you can't really get much. The stakes can't get much higher than that. So yeah, but I think that's partly just the audio thing. Even now, like whether it's podcast or audiobook or a YouTube thing, I think I get information better via audio. So yeah, if only some voice reader tech had been around for school and uni, I think I would have actually gone through a lot more stuff because I just listened to it.
Yeah, and it's funny thinking about how much easier it is though to listen to stuff now. Like, you know, youths are here. The cassette tapes didn't hold much, and so
no. And they sort of peeled at the bottom. They would come out sometimes, and you had to like put your little finger in and wind it up. Yeah.
And you had to rewind them.
You could just tap a button. I know. So.
And they were so thick, like, right? Because if you were going to listen to Harry Potter, how many cassette tapes was that? I didn't listen to Harry Potter, but it would have to be a lot. Later books, anyway.
The later ones, it must have been, you know, because they were advanced enough that you could flip them over. Yes. They had like a kind of reverse thing, but yeah, you're talking at least 3 or 4 cassettes for those bigger ones. And I think even when they got them into CD by the last book, that was maybe like a couple of CDs.
It's so funny. Like now Spotify and just will buying them off of whatever, you know, Amazon. It's a lot.
Just stream it all. Yeah.
Streaming it. Yeah, I think it's funny. You listed a lot of ones. I think got all of us, right? And you said N64, so I'm assuming Ocarina of Time was the Zelda game.
Ocarina of Time, yeah. To death, but I was but I was so young about it that like I couldn't really figure bits of it out. I had to get my big cousin to come help me with parts because I couldn't figure it.
Have you ever gone back and tried to play it like recently?
Not that game. I don't think I've gone so far back as N64 games. I know there's like been that 3D re-release for like a DS at some point. I didn't play that.
Because if you go back now, those games are still really hard. I still have my N64, so I'll hook it up and play it sometimes. And no camera angles. Like if you are a modern video gamer going back, like how did I play this as a kid?
Yeah, the weird how it would like it was called Z lock, right? You click Z, and it locks onto the thing, but then it doesn't shift properly, so you kind of end up doing this very weird sort of camera. Yeah, that would be but that is difficult.
I try to get my kids to play it. Like, you know, Super Mario 64 was like one of my favorites, and they just cannot. Like, they have grown up with more than 3 pixels. Like, it's so hard for them. Are you playing the modern Zelda games then? If you were a Zelda fan, have you played any Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom?
I very disappointingly have Breath of the Wild, and then kind of never got to it. Not because I really want to, but I just keep not getting the time. I keep thinking I need a nice block of time for this, and then with being very busy, this requires. And I know that especially if I'm in the middle of a draft, if I get too sucked away into a game, that's the death of that draft. And then what happens is you finish your book, you edit the thing, you collapse in a heap for like a week or 2, and then you kind of have to start the next one. And so I never quite allowed myself to just, but I've got it. I did play through The Witcher 3 recently, like very slowly, like really late, and I played for that very slowly. So I think Zelda Breath of the Wild will be my next one that I chip away at for God knows how long. and then Tears of the Kingdom. So I think the last I did Skyward Sword, I did Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess is actually, well, of the ones I've played, Twilight Princess is my favorite, which I think is a rogue choice. I know a lot of people wouldn't select that, but I ranked
It's a
it.
bold
Yeah.
choice, but I respect it because I also love Twilight Princess.
Yeah, great. So why do you like that one? Yeah, we could, yeah, a little fan group of two. What was it about Twilight Princess that you liked?
I loved being a wolf and being with like
Okay.
Mina. Is that her name, Mina? Am I
Yeah.
remembering that right?
Mina sounds about right. Yeah.
I loved her.
Google it.
As her character, I just was super into it. I will say that game did kind of terrify me though, like the shadow people. I get scared in video
Yeah.
games very easily. So I loved it, but it was scary.
I think it had a good vibe. Like you're right. Like as a companion character. So I think both of us were way too young for the very old Zelda games. So we're probably Ocarina of Time was your first one as well. So yeah. And like Navi is fine, but she doesn't say much. And then the one in Majora's Mask is this Navi 2.0. Again, doesn't necessarily say much. Just little bits and bobs. Hey, listen, over and over and over.
Hey, listen.
And then yeah, Mina. Whatever. This is terrible that we can't remember her name. If it's Mina,
I think it's Mina.
Look this up, but Mina. But she had like a whole personality. She was like a whole character, and like this story, this revelations and stuff. She's not just there giving you annoying advice or poking you. She's like an actual character in the game, and an interesting one, with her own motivations and stuff. So it was definitely a step up in that regard for me, in the storytelling. And I like the vibe. I like the art style. How it's a little more realistic, a little grungier, but not like too much. And just the whole journey felt more like, I guess, an epic fantasy in some ways. It felt more like a cohesive big epic. Everything seemed to build off the last thing, and when you got to that end fight, you had to use every tool. It just felt like a great culmination by the end.
I agree. I think the storytelling in that one was some of the best. It doesn't get enough credit for how good that story is. Zelda's an interesting property just because they do so many different things. Like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword are so different.
Yeah, they're so different. Yeah.
In tone, art, story, and I think that's very interesting as a property that they keep doing that.
Supposedly they're making a film now. It's finally happening, but yeah.
Video game films. Have you seen a video game film that you liked?
No.
No.
Sadly, no.
Some of them can be okay.
I went to the Warcraft film really hoping it was going to be good, and that was good.
I didn't see that one because I never played Warcraft. Yeah. I did play a lot of Tomb Raider though, and I did really love the first Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider movie. That was my jam.
What's the first? Yeah, one of those Tomb Raider movies is pretty good. This is the first one.
The first one. The second one's terrible.
Yeah. Okay.
Take my word for it.
I bet. Yeah. They call me Blood. I've seen them both, but that first one was good. So the first Tomb Raider was good. The Warcraft one was just so disappointing because they started in the wrong place. They followed the original RTS games, so like in the 90s, and then you've got the third RTS game was early 2000s, and that was the one where all the story actually got good. Anything before that was it's like backstory. You don't actually need it. But they decided to start with as if it was like the first game. Mm-hmm. But that works much better as backstory to the good story later. So they should have just started with the good story. It's a bit like the Star Wars. It's a bit like Star Wars. Yeah. Yes, exactly right. It'd be like if rather than getting the OT, he began with the prequels. It's like, no, you just start with the OT, start with the good bit, and have this backstory because you don't need it. You don't need to show it. It's not that interesting. Yeah. Oh well.
You just go in with low expectations. I saw an interesting thing about this will be interesting to hear about your ideas of character creation since you write for a living. But people said they thought Zelda would be a hard one because Link doesn't speak. He never says anything in any of the games. What's Link's personality, and anything that someone gives him, fans won't like.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure they're going to have the courage, but they shouldn't have him speak because it will just be too. It'll be too weird.
Can you imagine a movie with the bravery of your main character never speaking?
Well, I mean, it would be an interesting point. I think people would turn up just to. I think it's the sort of thing like if you manage to do it really well, it would be so good. Um, there's a couple of characters in Songs of Chaos in the later books that don't speak. One doesn't speak and then eventually speaks, but very mildly, and one doesn't speak at all, and she's like a little dragon. And the way that I have her speak is by giving visions and stuff like that. So she kind of puts visions into your head, and like you get senses and stuff. She communicates that way, but she doesn't have any actual speech like the other dragons would. Um, that is difficult enough when it's like a small character, but like the Zelda stories, you wouldn't have like a cast of umpteen thousands. It's going to be Link, whatever hell companion, and people that they interact with, and like I will admit it'd be difficult to get across some of the like you know, in the game, you run up to a character and you interact, and the character just spews information at you. I'm not quite sure how that will work with like this silent character running up, but I think there's a way to do it. I think that would be an incredible challenge and a good writing challenge. But I think when if you boil everything right down and you keep it very very tight, I think it's doable. And like it's film, so you can use you got a great actor that can emote. He can grunt. Link grunts and growls and like makes
Maybe
noises.
he's not fully silent. Maybe he's just like really laconic. Like he's not giving great speeches. Like maybe he can speak every once in a while to give them a little
No, I
grace.
don't. Be like in Halos. Be like if Master Chief took his helmet off. It would ruin it. Ruin it. You can't.
You can't do it.
Uh,
I like your idea of grunting.
Yeah. Well, when he attacks, he's like, hey, oh, whatever. So like, you can have all that, but no actual speak. You know, maybe he could write. I don't know. That might be a cheat.
I mean, what were the challenges you had writing a character who didn't speak then? I'm assuming it's a side character.
So the two of them are one is a I don't know, you know, spoilers and stuff like that. It's not big spoilers. Osric, who in book one is this tiny bit part role, essentially, becomes a POV character in book two and in book three onwards. Becomes a bit of a fan favorite, which is great. He has a spoilers, fuck it. His his dragon eventually is a little. She's so shy and whatnot. She seems mute and she doesn't speak for a long time. Eventually, she does, and it was just working on like body language, how she reacts. In you know, if she makes growling noises, it was like putting the right inflection on those. The dragon bond, they can obviously he can get a sense of her emotions and things like that, stuff like that. Just all about emotion and her sounds and her body language and stuff like that. It's quite difficult. You just have to. It's quite spare. You have to be kind of sparing, and it worked for them because he's quite a quiet character anyway. And then the one that does the visions again, I use body language and the intuitions and the growling and the voice and stuff like that. The animalistic side, and then the visions are can be whatever. But I don't just have the visions be like talking. You just cannot talk. She can't necessarily make other people. She doesn't really do speech. She just kind of does it through like imagery and symbols and sights and sounds and smells and stuff like this, and you kind of get a sense of what she's aiming at. But yeah, tough. I mean, it's tough. I think it's good to be sparing, but if it's really pared down in a tight Zelda movie, which presumably would be, because you're probably not going to have 16 dungeons that they crawl through in the movie, like.
I want to see every temple. Wind temple, fire temple. Yeah. I never even thought about that.
There is a book. I haven't read it. There is a book by Peter Newman where the character, I believe, is silent the entire time. And it's kind of like the trope. I think he has a young, companion. I think there's like an animal companion, but it's obviously not a talking one. I haven't read it. In fact, I mean, he won the David Gemmell debut award back whenever it came out. So by all accounts, it's quite good. So that might be, if anyone was interested to find out what a mute character would be like when it's the central character, that could be it.
Although writing is very different, right, than screen. There are benefits to screen, like being able to see facial expressions and things like that. But
Yeah.
then there's benefits to writing, which allows you to see and view inner thoughts.
Yes,
So
having the inner thoughts is probably a cheat. I don't know how you could have a mute character that didn't have an inner thought. That would be, yeah, I don't know
weird.
how you would get them. But with movie, yeah, I guess you hope the actor can emote well, that they're a good actor. You hope that the music can tell you the story as much as anything else. Like the music can flow and tell you a lot of stuff. Visually, it's going to have everything's going to have to be expressed through body language and the costumes and the, yeah. I mean, we'll see. But I do think if they make him talk, I think that will just be too disconcerting. I think no one will like it. But
I mean,
we'll see.
I am. You probably haven't seen this. I watch a lot of Pokemon movies now because of my kids, like newer ones.
Right.
And they had Pikachu
Yeah.
talk at the end of one of them.
No,
and it was like
like
every review. The movie's actually pretty good. My kids like it, but every review is like, absolutely not. Like, what were you thinking? Pikachu cannot talk. Like, absolutely not.
None of them can talk. So that's what's it? Mewtwo. So it's really odd that
for very specific lore reasons, Mewtwo can, you know?
Yes. Yeah. No, Pikachu can't talk. Jeez. No, hard pass on that.
But going back, I think it's interesting because I mean, I've read the first one, so I didn't know about the character that couldn't speak later on in the books. But that's interesting to me because you also, you know, the main dragon in the series is blind. So I think that's interesting that you, I mean, I'm not saying like I'm like super versed in dragon, but I've read a decent amount of dragon books. And generally, they don't have like dragons who are experiencing, like in this book, the species is very resistant to having any sort of dragon that is less than ideal.
Yes,
so did you always know you wanted to focus on that, or how did that come about?
That came about. So once I decided I wanted to try my hand at the big dragon rider epic, I then looked at the ones that I really liked and stood the test of time in the sort of going for the vibe. So like the vibe I wanted to go after was the inheritance cycle, kind of timeless classic vibe.
Mm-hmm.
No interest in grimdark, no interest in some of these things. So we want the timeless classic. Okay, that's a good foundation to look at. And then I also thought the How to Train Your Dragon movies were really excellent. Almost unnecessarily.
I saw that inspiration. I was going to ask you because when I was reading, I love How to Train Your Dragon, and I was like, oh, there is some How to Train Your Dragon in this.
There is. I mean, there's probably you're kind of, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people compare it to Inheritance for a lot of good reasons, but in some ways, it's more like more of this direct fight, at least for Hall and Ash, is much more Toothless and Hiccup than
I agree
than anything else.
Because I've read Inheritance, and I've read that, and I actually was like, if I wouldn't have necessarily immediately thought Inheritance, just because there's a dragon and a boy doesn't mean it's the same. So I agree. I think it's more Hiccup and Toothless.
Yeah, Toothless. Yeah. What I it's kind of obvious like that in that movie, in that lore, there are no dragon riders, and they are the first pair. And why does it even start? It's because Hiccup shoots Toothless out of the sky, and he breaks his tail wing. Toothless's tail wing gets broken, so now Toothless can't fly, so he's trapped in that little gully, and Hiccup goes down, and he can't kill him. And then he comes back and feeds him, and they become friends. And eventually, Hiccup is able to use his engineering skills to make a little mechanical device that he can control that makes the tailwind work, so they can then fly. Right. So it's a really smart way to be like, dragons and humans aren't friends. How do we get them to become dragon riders? This is the first one, and the first one has to be very unique and whatnot, because they wouldn't just suddenly be friends. In that setup, they've been fighting each other constantly, right? And so, but the sort of, I was like boiling that down. It was like, well, Toothless becomes friends with Hiccup because Toothless really needs Hiccup. Hiccup does start looking after him, and that's helpful. But he also really needs him. If without him, he can't fly anymore. And so there's a really strong need that the dragon also needs the kid or the human character, which felt really unique because I think with a lot of Dragon Rider stories, I always had this inkling of like, why did the dragons decide to do this? Why would they ever allow humans to bond with them? Because what did they get out of this partnership? You know, it's kind of a conceit of the subgenre. You just go, yeah, they just have. But actually, if you think, like, why would a big dragon with a lot of magic have this little human on their back that gains magic from them, but it's not like a two-way street thing? But like, at least in the Toothless and Hiccup setup, Toothless absolutely needs Hiccup, and so you see how that begins. And I knew that if I was going to write a Dragon Rider series, the kind of core relationship being the main character with the main dragon, their relationship has to be like the core. That has to carry the whole thing. If that doesn't work, nothing's going to work. And that the bond between the human and dragons in this world would be really foundational to the magic system and to the character arcs. And so I'm just kind of looking at what made Toothless and Hiccup work. And it was like, okay, so how can I do something similar, but obviously sufficiently different? How would you make it so that the dragon really needs the kid? And obviously in this world, it's a bit different. Like humans and dragons have been dragon riding for a long time. That's a completely different setup. There are reasons why the dragons would do this because of the backstory, because of how the bonds work. The dragons gain extra magical power from the humans. So there's that kind of to and fro. Like there's a reason why some people would sign up to do this. So some dragons would sign up for this.
Yeah, it's interesting you saying that, because I feel like you actually
Yeah.
addressed that multiple times in the book. And I never even considered that, but like you take a lot of time to like, here is why in this situation they will, in this situation they won't. And here's what happens when it goes bad. So I think that's interesting that you started with that question. Like, why in these Dragon Rider books? Why would a dragon want?
Why would a dragon do this? Yeah, I don't think I consciously came to that. It just was like, it struck me as because when I well build, sometimes this comes to me, some of these obvious, well, hopefully obvious questions, but sometimes it's in those obvious questions that if you start to answer them, it kind of creates a different spin. So it was like that. So yeah, I had my setup. I knew why the bonds work, but then okay, Holt and Ash are going to be unique. But what makes them unique? All these various things for boring people, you know, like and so okay, dragons don't want weakness. Ash has to be weak in some way. That's why they didn't want him. And the blindness essentially came. I was racking my head trying to figure out how to work this out, and I just loved Daredevil on Netflix. So the Netflix's Daredevil was like peak TV at the time as I was thinking about this, and I just thought, well, yeah, if Ash was blind, that would be why the other dragons wouldn't want him around. And when he's a little baby, before he learns to cope in the way that he may, you know, in the way that he can, he would really rely on Holt, the human, to help him out and feed him and stuff like that. And it'd be a lot scarier as a little baby, like not being able to find your way or anything. So their bond would become uniquely strong in this setting. And that's kind of once I got that started, I was like, the rest could kind of build up from there. Like that kind of core idea of like, you know, again, because the main characters are always strong and unique and stuff, but I was like, they need to be unique and special, but not because they're the chosen one or anything, but because of how the world is and how they go against the grain of the world, how it's active choices from Holt. Like, you know, no one asked him to take that egg. In fact, they told him not to. And both of them are essentially punished all the time for like doing what we might think is the right thing. There's no prophecy, there's no bloodlines, he's not selected for anything, but he kind of chooses himself through his actions, which are more about being driven by compassion and stuff. And so it just felt like a subtly different setup. And once I got that going, we were off. And so as a kind of side to that, I have cystic fibrosis, which is not blindness, but it is living with a condition. And so I was able to put some of that experience into Ash. You know, obviously it's not the same, but how Ash thinks about things, how he thinks about managing it or coping with it or living with it, and essentially just getting up and moving on and pushing ahead anyway as best he can, that kind of thing. Like I was able to put a lot of that into Ash, and so hopefully there's an authenticness to his thought process in his portrayal, even though obviously these conditions are very different.
Was it cathartic then to put that part into Ash if it comes from a personal spot?
Yeah, a little bit. I think there's a. I can't remember the exact wording. It's been a long time, but Ash has a little speech at the end of Ascendant at some point where he kind of thinks about this out loud to Holt about how he's been treated and how he's just going to get up and do it anyway and just show them that he's perfectly capable. Like that was probably the most. That would probably be the most close to personal insert as it gets. Otherwise, I like to keep things as a light touch. So it was cathartic-ish, but it just seemed like you write what you know, not completely. You just put little bits in here and there. So that was one thing, because I could put in this breathing physiotherapy techniques you do for cystic fibrosis. Like, so cystic fibrosis, your lungs get all clogged up with mucus and crap, and so they get infected and inflamed, and you have to do a lot of like breathing techniques to clear them, do a lot of exercise. So the year that I was writing Ascendant was a particularly bad year, and I was in hospital for quite a long time, constantly doing these physiotherapies over and over and over. It was tedious as hell. And I was thinking, oh, I need to make a meditation part of this magic system. What should I do? And then it hit me like a bolt out of the blue. Oh, I should just sort of take these physiotherapy techniques and make that, because it is tedious as hell, but that's kind of the point of those systems. And so I could like make this like breathing technique in the book, which like, you know, it's quite detailed, but that is essentially what I was doing to like clear my airways. And so that's how they cleanse the dragon's core through these exactly the same breathing technique.
You made it just as tedious for your characters. How could you?
Yeah. Well, it's hard work. You have to work hard to be a dragon rider. It doesn't just fit out, you know. They have to work at it. They have to earn it. So
yeah, that's super interesting backstory. I like hearing always where the ideas come from, and it sounds like that dragons for this series was your first idea, although this isn't your first series, right? You have another series that you wrote first that's also a dragon series. So was it just like, I gotta write about dragons, and there's
no, so let me grab it off the shelf.
Yeah, because I know it's not a dragon rider though. I think it's just dragons in it. Am I correct about that one?
Kinda. So that's the first trilogy altogether. And yes, it's called The Dragon's Blade. Are there dragons in it? Technically, but it's more like, so this is the main character, who is a dragon, right? They are sort of stuck in human form in this series. Okay. So they're not scaly fire-breathing monsters. They are humans. They just have, like Captain America, they have super strength, super speed, that sort of stuff. They live alongside regular humans in the series, and there's a bit of tension because, I mean, if suddenly a race of superhumans sprung up here, I think everyone would be a bit tense. Kind of the heart and soul of that book is actually like kind of race relations between all these factors. There's the usual backdrop, there's a Dark Lord, there's demonic forces, and all the rest of it, but really it's about how those races and characters interact, and our main character is kind of cut between two worlds. He's a dragon that is raised by humans, and so it's all kind of you know, he's all a bit messed up and stuff like that. So there are technically dragons in it, but not as people think, and that was kind of why it was initially hard to sell this series. Like, it got successful eventually, but initially it was hard because if people wanted dragons, they were like, "Oh man, where's the dragons?" And if people didn't want dragons, they were like, "I'm not reading that because the dragons." And I'm like, "But there's actually not any dragons." But they're like, "No, it's got a dragon in the title. I'm not paying it." So I was like, "Oh shit!" The Venn diagram I've pushed them out. But somehow, eventually, the message seemed to get through, and it's done well.
Well, did that teach you any lessons about self-publishing and how hard the accuracy of how you advertise your books are?
And what made me so Dragon's Blade was the first story that I ever conceived of, and it was the one I had since I was a little kid, and you know, the one that was always in you, the way that a lot of people have that story that's bubbling away. That's what that was, and I wrote it, and I couldn't have done it any other way because it was the thing that got me writing, and it was what motivated me. But yeah, I mean, maybe if I could transport my knowledge back then, I could have presented it better, marketed it better. You know what I mean? I could have figured out to do it better. But partly that being a bit of an uphill struggle and like feeling I was being pulled in two directions. People were telling me it's either too generic, even though they haven't even read it, or people telling me it's not generic enough or something. You know, in some ways, like I was like, okay, well, for the next series, my challenge is going to be, it's going to be as sort of on the money as possible for a subgenre. So I'm going to take the classic stuff. I'm going to take the hero's journey. I'm going to take it all. I'm going to study it as much as I can, distill it into its essence, make the most tropey thing ever, but still make it work. That was kind of the challenge. Like, make it tropey as all hell, shove it all in, every single one, like every single one, but yet still make it work. Like that was kind of the challenge to start songs in some sense, in response to that being a bit difficult to sell it. Yeah, so
and it worked.
You tell me to.
I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I feel like that seriously got pretty quick.
Songs, yeah, well, it took off a lot. Yeah, so songs did well, pretty much out the gate. Although you wouldn't have seen the first cover for it, will you? That's
no, I have this cover, which I love. By the way, I love the covers of all of these ones so much.
Yeah, the new covers are spectacular. So when it first came out, it had this cover.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's coming up on camera very well.
But I mean, I can see it's like a dragon blue, red, very
it's kind of like it's a battle. It's like a scene from the end of the first book where they're at that battle at night, right? And actually, the full painting is on my website, and if you look at it on the screen, that's nicely backlit. It's a really nice piece. It's like the whole of the city of the islands now on fire, and Talia and Pyra on the back cover and all. It's a really nice piece. But when you put that up on Amazon appears to, I didn't know this then, it desaturates images a bit, so it makes them darker. So it was already kind of dark, and then they made it super dark, and there was nothing I could do to brighten it. And so it just, I don't think it was popping. And it was selling, but I just felt in my bones like, no, this should be doing better. And then I switched it to the cover that it has now. And it just took off. It kind of had like a second launch. I've never seen anything like it. Like normally, you get your launch and then you come down. When I flipped the cover on, it went back up again, like higher than it was at launch, and that was months afterwards. So I've never seen things behave quite like that before. So it was kind of interesting. And yeah, since when I switched that cover, it was already doing well, and then it just became very well. Never crazy. That's the thing with songs. Or at least in ebook, like it's never been like ludicrously high ever, but it's always just been doing well, just consistent, really consistent. And it hasn't ever quite fallen away ever. It never quite gets super high up. It just keeps going along very, very stable. Its audio has from time to time gone to the moon and back. It's a slightly different story, but that consistency has been its superpower in some ways.
Yeah, it's interesting because as a judge for SPFBO, one of the things I say the most is like, it matters a lot that your cover tells the reader what your book is about. Like that's crazy. You basically had a second launch changing the vibe of your cover because people want to know what to expect. And, it's it's unfortunate too, because, there's so many good books out there that are just not telegraphing what they're about.
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, the original covers for Dragon's Blade were fine, but not amazing. And then actually, after Ascendant cover switch worked really well, I switched this one to this beautiful Chris McGrath.
Yeah, because I saw the original ones. I don't know if they're the originals, but they remind me a lot more of like Robin Hobb covers.
Right. Yeah.
Like maybe. They're very more script heavy.
Yeah, they were designed by a UK designer who designed them for the UK market because that's what she's used to.
Totally.
You only get to upload one cover. Yeah, you only get to upload one cover though. And so Dragon's Blade struggled in the US in the way that Ascendant has never struggled. Ascendant, oddly, has struggled in the UK for a long time, and only in the last 6 months or so has it picked up.
Do you think it's a cover issue?
It could be a cover issue. But it's weird because in the UK, whenever people see Ascendant at an event, like on the table, they sell out like instantly. But the algorithm, I don't know, didn't like it or something. But if you're going to sell in one market, you're going to sell to the US. That's the sensible choice. So no regrets there.
Tell me about that. Why is that? I don't like. I wouldn't have guessed that.
It's just so much bigger. It's just so much bigger. Like, but yeah, it's.
Well, yeah, I guess the US is huge compared to the UK. Just numbers.
The US is huge. The US is just huge compared to the UK. The US also is much more into digital than the UK, like just relatively speaking. So it's already bigger, and then a bit higher proportion of those people are more willing to buy ebooks and audiobooks. Like the UK Audible store is tiny, like tiny.
Interesting.
Compared to the US one. So, you know, like there are some people that obviously buck the trend. There's some people that do kind of UK-ish looking covers and they do very well. But I would say broadly, the market, you know, US covers have typically had that character work illustration, or they used to. I mean, maybe not. It depends. Depends these days. There's a lot more graphic work being done, but in the UK, I think when people saw illustrative covers, they think somehow it's not as fancy or something. I'm not sure, but I think it's either changing or it's just the right people are coming across it now and finding it and appreciate the covers. What was but both cover switches worked. Like even the Dragon's Blade audio box set, which was selling well. Once I switched that cover again, it had a similar thing. It just went even higher. Like so, it definitely helps. And you do have to, and occasionally you get it wrong, so you have to think about changing it, which is a hard decision to make, and it takes But
like, what if it makes it worse?
For me twice.
You're like, what if it makes it worse though? Do you know what I mean? Like,
it could, but I think it'd be bad. I think you'd have. I mean, presumably you'd have enough people to check and let you know if it was worse or not, right? You'd probably have a good sense of like if it was worse or better, and if everyone agrees it's better, it probably won't make it worse.
Yeah.
But it depends obviously on your budget and stuff. But it's true, like now I in the fortunate position where people want to come and ask me for some help and advice, and a lot of the time I don't even get past the cover and the title. A lot of the time. Sometimes I'll get to the blurb, but I'm like, look, this cover and this title. Forget about everything else. This needs to be fixed because unless this improves, there's no secret button that I can tell you to push anyway, and there's no magic that can be done unless it's set up right from the get-go. And that includes the title too, because sometimes titles are very too specific. There's too much world building in the title, terms that are made up that we have no sense of what they are because we haven't read the books yet. It'd be no good if a Game of Thrones was called I don't know, the Westerosi something or even the Iron Throne. Maybe the Iron Throne's cool enough to make it, but like it's called a Game of Thrones. It doesn't have any specific world building element to it, and a lot of titles are like that because we don't know your world yet. So you have to sell us the vibe and the tone and the sense of the journey just from the title and the cover, and then worry about the blurb. So it's very hard to get right. It certainly helps if you're writing in a very obvious space like dragon riding. You kind of know what the cover ought to be.
It has to have dragon on
it. Dragon.
It is interesting because with Indie Fantasy Fund, which my husband and I do, when we look at what people want to spend the money on, we actually do a similar process when we're choosing. Like, if you're not asking for cover art, but we think your cover art and your title, like, you got to start there. Like, an audiobook isn't going to do anything if your cover and title aren't selling what the novel is, no matter how good it is. And it's hard because art is expensive. I feel like that's got to be one of the most challenging things for indie authors is like getting the right artist, being able to afford the right art, because unfortunately, like in that business, you don't have a publisher pushing your stuff out. So like first sight matters a lot,
Yeah, it does. It does. What frightens me is that my initial covers of Dragon's Blade were very affordable and they sort of did the job. And then it managed to work kind of regardless and everything. And then once I got some money together, I was able to kind of put more of that into Battle Spire and songs and stuff like that. But yeah, like it's that chicken and egg. It'd be hard to know where to start. It's like hard to tell someone, drop $2,500–3,000 on the cover straight away, because that's not necessarily great advice for every single person. They
Definitely
might not have that kind of money. So yeah, it's hard. It's a hard one to judge, but I think I think so long as it sells the right vibe and tone, you're going to be mostly the way there. It doesn't have to be a crazy expensive cover. It just has to be the right. It has to sell the right vibe.
Yeah,
Whether
let
that's
people know what they're getting
graphical
into.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you get asked a lot about dragons, obviously, because you've written about dragons.
Obviously, yeah.
Something I wanted to know is like, what are your most unpopular dragon opinions? Like, if you're gonna get as spicy as it gets, like, I don't care if it's books or characters or themes. Like, what are your unpopular? Like, what are your Twilight Princess opinions of the dragon world?
Yeah, you know, like it's odd. Everyone thinks I'm obsessed with dragons, so I must be right because I write about them. I'm not really that bothered. I think they're only as interesting as they are characters in themselves. So, like in Songs of Chaos, that's why they talk. That's why they have their own motivations. That's why they have their own agendas. And that's why they're as varied as people will be, and with a little bit of theming of their magic type, perhaps, or things like this. But otherwise, they're just people. They happen to be dragons, the same way that in Dragon's Blade they were dragons that happen to be people. Because if they're not characters, you know, every so often slaying if it's just like a big dragon that you fight, you know, back in the book, or that can be fun, like in Dragon Age Origins, those RPG games, like the first one, you fight maybe like two, and they're memorable fights because they're the toughest things you fight, and they, you know, but they're not like, you don't interact with them, they just sort of there, you fight them. That can work, but if they're going to be around for a lot of time, I think they need to have just as varied personalities as anyone else, because I write my dragons so varied. Sometimes I'll get people coming and telling me that I'm writing dragons wrong and I don't understand dragons. That clearly this is not how they would behave. It's like, well,
we don't know
if
how
they only behaved. I don't know if yeah. Also, I've written them so wrong. Apparently, yeah, I've been told like Ash would never be blind because dragons would never have issues, and I'm like, well, that's the point of what I'm.
Has someone actually told you that? Because that's like the whole point of the novel.
Yeah. I know. Oh yeah, you get all sorts. You get a lot of stuff like that. Dragons, either a dragon would never be ill, or dragons would never be would be that scornful towards people who are ill. It's like, well, why? What? I can just do what I like. It's my story.
Dragons aren't real. So in my
dragons
world,
aren't real.
this is how dragons are.
Yeah. You also see comments sometimes of like, oh my god, I can't believe you did that to that dragon. Poor dragon. I'm like, you know, the dragon isn't real, right? You know, I didn't masochistically blind him with like a spoon or something, you know? Like,
I mean,
really odd.
They care about the characters enough, but
but I think I don't think they're necessarily interesting just on their own, unless they are a character. Like Smog is an interesting dragon because he is a character in that story. He's a bit psychotic. He's a little bit psychotic or psychopathic. You know, you have this interaction with him. There's a tension there. He has wants, even though his want is just to sit in his gold. As a classic dragon, where like he isn't just like an animal, and he isn't super majestic or honorable. He is obviously a very bad dragon, but you interact with him, and he is a character. Therefore, you remember him. He's memorable. Like if they aren't characters in their own right, in them of themselves, they're whatever. Like they're just dragons.
Okay. So then, what's your favorite fantasy creature? If it's not dragons.
Well, I'd say they're not. Well, I'd say they're not my favorite. Not my favorite. Give me a spot. Quite like phoenixes, but depends on the type of phoenix. I put a phoenix in songs. Quite like that. Anything well done. That's a cop-out, but it's like anything well done. Anything can be surprising. If a creature comes to me that like really stands out, I'll come back to it. But I think why dragons are so prevalent is because they're an extreme form of a thing. So you can make them the extreme enemy. You know, the classic. You know, you have to slay a dragon symbolically to get to what's useful. You have to slay the dragon to get to the gold. We have to, in our real life, slay dragons, in quotes, to achieve what we're trying to achieve, to overcome what we're trying to overcome. So they're like the extreme enemy. And Dragon Rider stories try to invert that a little bit by saying, well, they can be your super best friend as well. They can be the extreme form of whatever it is that we're trying to deal with. And so they're very compelling when done well, because it's kind of like people do have Griffin Rider stories, people have other types of Rider stories, and there's no disparaging that at all. But somehow I think if you think riding a creature, everyone does sort of go to Dragon Rider, like, because that's the best one somehow. Like, because it's the kind of the most extreme form of that particular fantasy. That particular one is Dragon Rider. If you're going to have a super best friend, might as well be a dragon.
Yeah, I've never even thought of the connection to how that term has become into our vernacular as like, oh, you got to go slay a dragon. Like, people would say that about something non-fantasy, or same with like rising from the ashes like a phoenix. People talk about that a lot. Fall Out Boy has a whole song about that called Phoenix.
Yes.
But that's kind of interesting, actually, to think of maybe why people have. I never really thought about why people had attached to dragons so much, but the idea of like it is the ultimate display of power, or most extreme version, is kind of interesting to think about.
That's my current thinking on that. Might change.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now I know you get asked a lot about inheritance. Did you read Pern, like Dragons of Pern? Was that something you did as a kid, or no?
Okay. I've never done Pern, so I know Emma Caffrey did a white dragon. I didn't realize.
I wasn't. I think you can have a white dragon. I think that's okay.
Everything's been done. Now everyone has a white
I was curious because I read.
I've never read Pern. I did try the first book. Maybe that's not a good place to start. Sometimes with big series, that's not always the best place to start. I agree, but I did try the first book and I did struggle with it, so I set it aside. So there are no knowing influences of Pern into songs, because it's not something I've interacted with. But I suspect a lot comes through, because a lot of other stuff will have been influenced by Pern, and so by games of telephone over the generations, that it will come through.
Yeah, I read the first Pern book as an adult and did not like it, so that's why I was just curious if you had read it. It did not do anything for me. But I do think it's interesting, like, our ideas of dragons have been so influenced and changed over the hundreds of years of being written by dragons. It's kind of interesting how they change. And I think right now more than ever, based on like old dragon stories I've read, like they're more personable than ever. Like right now we want dragons that are our friends. They're not, like you said, like the Dragon Age. Like when you play Dragon Age, I love Dragon Age. They're the enemy. That's the only interaction you have with them. So it's kind of interesting that we have come full circle. Now we want to ride our dragons, not just fear them.
I think it comes and goes, like, because Pern wasn't was that the first Dragon Rider big story? Or I'm sure there was stuff before.
I'm sure it was. It was probably one of the most famous at the time.
Yeah. I think it's just that kind of extreme thing. So if in doubt, put a dragon in as the thing. Yeah.
I mean, and dragons often are what's the right word? Like when people think fantasy, like people who don't read fantasy, I should say. Like if I tell people like I read fantasy, like, oh, so like dragons and stuff, and you're like, well, sure, but like also no.
Who was what actor? Oh God, who was in the Game of Thrones TV show? One of the actors, come to me. He played the island that the Hound probably goes to on the show with the Hound. Have you watched the show? Have you just read the
I have
books?
not watched the show because it's too graphic for me, so I can't help you with any show things.
Sorry, this is, I need to remember.
I've only read the first 3 books, so don't spoil me.
Oh, you haven't done Feast? Okay.
I haven't done Feast yet.
Good. Just because you caught me, because that's going to be a Feast thing. All right. Well, yeah, one of the actors of Game of Thrones who came in later and was being a little bit dismissive of it at that point, said it's the show of tits and dragons. And so, like, yeah, fantasy might be the magic and dragons, sword and dragons stuff. Yeah, it's kind of yeah.
I actually have heard.
Like,
I heard that quote actually.
Yeah.
At the time, because yeah. Anyway, yeah. It's just, it's kind of funny. Yeah. Anyway, not much to say there, but that is like the idea of it, and whether Games of Thrones changed that or not is a whole another debate. But
well, they had the dragons people love. I mean, people watched Game of Thrones that never read a fantasy book, and
a lot of people.
They like the dragons. They're cool. People, even if they're not really into fantasy, people kind of know what a dragon is. It's just that part of the culture. It's that part of our myths and our folklore and stuff.
I think the show Game of Thrones did a good job of showing some people that when a dragon is in your story, it doesn't mean that that's what the story is about, right? A Song of Ice and Fire is like a very politically and character-driven story. And so I do think it served to show people that, like, people are reading fantasy sometimes for escapism, but there's also a lot of other stuff that people are reading it for. So I think it did help with that at least. But this has been a lovely chat. I will say, if you like dragons with backstory, Tears of the Kingdom will maybe give you something in the dragon department. Okay. No spoilers. Okay. You'll have to get hundreds of hours in before you get there. But but it is there. I always like to end on the question about, what are you currently reading? Tell me about, like, what you're reading.
I am currently I just finished Making Money by Terry Pratchett. I did Going Postal and then Making Money. I know there's another Moist book after that, which I've downloaded. I haven't started it yet. I went off into a non-fiction briefly. And I think I'm going to stay on the Pratchett bent for a little while. I think I need to catch up on my Discworld. So I think that's the mood I'm in right now. So I've got a lot of those to work through. So
always a good mood. How many have you read? There's like 35, right?
Yeah, there's loads. Not many. I read like the first handful of the Discworlds, like way back. And I know that some people say it doesn't get good until X time in. And I read some of the kids' ones, like Truckers. They were really funny. And obviously Good Omens and stuff. So I've got quite a bit to catch up on, and I'm looking forward to it.
Me as well. Like that, I want to read all of Discworld eventually. Sometimes it's hard to prioritize them, but then once you do, they're always so good. They always hit every time.
Yeah. No, I mean, the wit, the humor, and how he's able to. There's a little bit in Making Money. Is it in Making Money? There's a little bit in Making Money about golems, and he has these golems in it, and people don't like the golems because they're too good at hard. They can work hard. They don't need breaks. They don't need rest. So everyone's afraid that if all these new golems come in from this place, they're going to drive wages down, and people are angry and all this stuff, right? And it's like, it's not too hard to see the parable, but it could apply to anything at any point. It could be actual immigration, but it could also be technology. You talk about the AI thing, everyone's afraid that's going to strike. The golems can represent so much. It's his like genius to make things very timeless, as well as funny. It's the way that Tolkien is timeless because you can never quite. It's not one-to-one, and nor is the stuff in Pratchett, but yet it does touch upon a lot of stuff that comes back again and again and again and again.
Pratchett has the ability, I always say this about him, like, he understands the root of an issue. And because he writes about the root of an issue, it never goes out of style. Like, it's always hits. Like, every time I read, I'm like, I'll go and check the date it was written, because sometimes I am so convinced it had to be written after he died, because like, it is so on the nose for what you're experiencing. It's like, nope, he wrote that in, 1981, and it's just still relevant 40 years later.
Yeah. Human nature, oddly enough, doesn't change too much.
No. And if you have an author who understands what, doesn't just see the top problem, they see like the root of the issue, that's when it becomes timeless. Yeah. Pratchett, go read Pratchett. That's what we're both saying. If you haven't tried it, go try.
It's go read Pratchett. Yeah.
And do you have an elevator pitch for one of your series, or anything new you're working on, or anything you want people to know about?
Well, Sons of Chaos will be 5 books when it's finished, so I'm working on book 4, and then I'll be working on book 5. So I've got a long way to go there. The elevator pitch, so to speak, is that it's about a servant boy who defies society to save a blind dragon from death and rises to become a dragon rider. No prophecies, no bloodlines, none of that. Very much a story about good people trying to stay good in a very brutal, dark world.
I think that is a great pitch. And I would also like to add that it is family friendly. I want to share it with my son, who's an avid reader. So if you have like a YA able child, you could read it together. Not like super young. There's definitely stuff in it that's like, you know.
Yeah, it's not for little kids.
It's not for little kids. There's like the themes, they wouldn't understand like some of the bigger themes and the things, but it is like appropriate. So it's a fun book to share. Like you could definitely share it with like an older teen maybe, which is I think always great.
I think so. That's the kind of the point, was a bit timeless, a little bit ageless. Like I know that there are people who are 10, 11, 12 that have read the books and enjoy them. I've got, people in my Discord who are like pensioners who enjoy them, everything in between, and that kind of, like, so if you're
like Lord of the Rings, like the kind of story that you can read as a kid or as an adult, there's something there.
Yeah, I think, a bit like that. So if you're an adult and you look at that and you were worried it's like too YA or something, whatever that means to you, maybe give it a try if you like that idea of that big hero's journey epic, because I think there's, I think the nuance and the richness is definitely there, particularly as the books go on. Like, I know you've not got there, but there's some growing up moments for Holt in book 3 that mean a lot to me, and I'm especially proud of. And so I think it just takes it a little, hopefully elevates it just that little bit more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me, Michael. It was so fun to talk video games and dragons and content. And if you guys haven't, go check out his books. We talked a lot about Ascendant today because that's the one I read. But you have your other series that are Dragons as Humans. And remind me the title of your new lit RPG.
My lit RPG I wrote between Dragon's Blade and Songs of Chaos. So it's called Battle Spire, and it is like a standalone story. And it is essentially Ready Player One meets Die Hard, or perhaps World of Warcraft meets Die Hard, like literally that. Like, it's very Die Hard referencey. It was a lot of fun to write it. So yeah,
that's a great place to start then for those who like lit RPG or just want a standalone, which is like rare to find in our spaces. So go check out.
Thanks so much for. Well, thanks so much for having me on. And we never quite got our Song of Ice and Fire deep dive, but if you ever have a deep dive, I'm game, because I've got the Folio Society set here, which I dropped a lot of money on.
Because I only own the first one.
You got the first one. Oh, okay, right. I got them. Oh, it's great.
I don't think I didn't notice. I did the whole time. I was like, oh, he owns all of them. My husband actually just surprised me with that. He's like, I can tell you're becoming obsessed with this. So like, here you go, surprise, early birthday present. But I already have a feeling like I'm gonna have to save up to get the whole series because they're so pretty. I'm starting
definitely a splurge
soon.
You're starting, okay. Good.
I'm finishing my current book.
What you think?
Yeah, I'm starting Peace for Crows, so I'm very excited. But yes,
when you finish Dance, you can let me know.
I will let you know. And a lot of people are excited for me to like dive deep into the 20 years worth of theories that you guys have had the time to develop. So
I've gone nonsense tinfoil hat deep on some of this stuff. It is great. If I can recommend a channel to you when you get to that stage and you're ready to go right in, there's a YouTuber called Preston Jacobs who does the best Song of Ice and Fire content, really about the books, tons of fan theories, a lot of it his own, and they're really well researched. He does these long series, and some of it occasionally you think that's a bit of a stretch, but some of it you're just like, no, that's it, that's the answer, that's the
I have been recommended that YouTube channel.
Okay.
A lot. Yes. In my comments, everyone is so ready for me to just be done and go to that channel. Like everyone's like, just do it, Go watch. I'm waiting because I don't want to be spoiled accidentally. But I just
No,
finished
you will be
Dunkin' Egg,
spoiled. So you got to
so we're
think.
ready to go.
Dunkin' Egg's brilliant. I love Dunkin' Egg as well. It's great. I'm looking forward to the TV show. Hope they do that very well.
I am too. I think I might actually
Great
watch
stuff.
that one. We'll see. And thank you guys who tuned in for watching. Go check out Michael's books. And as always, we'll see you next time. Bye.